So I saw on the other one, it totally blocked my face the whole time. So just to clarify, just want to show you. So these are the tubes of watercolor paint that I was telling you about. And then I just wanted to, talk about like the salt. This is the salt. This is the salt. Doesn't really matter. All right, so first thing you're gonna do, obviously you have your glass of water. You can get 2 glasses of water if you wanna stop and get ready, so you're ready to go. And you're also gonna want a pencil because first what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna demo to you all the different techniques and I'll talk about what they can be used for. And then basically you're gonna do it in your sketchbook. So the first thing I want you to do is turn to fresh clean page, divide it down the middle, divide it in half, half again, half again. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do we're gonna do a wash. And then the next one we're gonna do is we're gonna do a gradient wash. So washes are gonna be your bread and butter of doing watercolor. So you can use, like I think I talked about it before, so you can use whatever paintbrushes you want. So generally speaking, we start out with our biggest, our thickest, our fattest paintbrushes, and then we get, as we get like close to the end, you use your sharper details. So I'm gonna use, this is a number 12. I think many of you have like a number 10, but you are welcome to use this guy. So the point of a watercolor paintbrush is it's really soft and it absorbs a ton of water. So you can kind of see, hang on, I'm coming back. All right. Okay. So I just grabbed some other paintbrushes to kind of show you. They have obviously different paintbrushes for different reasons, but when you see ones that have really stiff, short bristles, this kind of thing is not great for watercolor because what you want is like longer bristles so that they can hold more water. Because if you have like short bristles like this is not gonna hold a ton of water. So you're gonna have to keep going back to get more paint the whole time. Okay, so let's start with a wash. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna mix our color. So we can mix any color we want, so you don't have to do the exact same as me. But we're gonna, I don't know, let's pick green. Green's a nice color. So there's a little bit of yellow. So the first thing you're gonna do is grab some green, put it in your, there we go. So you make like a nice watery puddle. So once you have your watery puddle, we're gonna clean our paintbrush off. So I use my hands a lot. You don't have to. You can obviously, absolutely use a paper towel if you want to. So we're gonna grab some water. So, see if I don't know if you can see the water. All right, so we grab water. I wanna get the excess water off. The first thing you're doing, just plain water, you're going to wet the paper. So all I'm doing right now is just painting with some water. So what this does is this makes like an area for the paint to flow. So next, we're gonna grab some of our color and then we're gonna come back and you'll see, because it's already wet, the color will just kind of fulfill this whole space. So what we want with a wash, this is all about even color, okay? So the reason we paint with water first is so that our color can flow evenly across the whole page and we don't have any streaks. So you can always, see how we have a little dot there? I can dry my paintbrush a little bit and then I can suck it up a little bit, there we go. All right, so that is our wash. Thin, even color, that's what we're going for. Okay, so the next one is called a gradient wash. So just to be fancy, we're gonna pick another color. Because, you gotta do this in your book. Why not make it colorful? All right, so we got some orange. So next we're gonna do a gradient wash. It is exactly what it sounds like. So we start out, we get ourselves some water, get the excess water off. We're gonna paint the page with just plain water first. Plain water, plain water, plain water. Okay, so now that we have plain water, the next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna take your paint, you're gonna go at the top of where you put this, and we're gonna try to put as much paint as possible here, And then what we want to do is we want it to kind of get lighter as it goes down. So we can get some water in here. And then we're going to pull this bead downward so that it fades. Because the idea is we want it to have more color at the top and less color at the bottom. So did you see how I went back in? And if we were working on a board, we would be able to like tilt it. So there's that one spot that looks darker than all the others. So I'm going to come back in with my paintbrush and just kind of pick it up. So we want a gradient wash where it's like darker on the top and you know, lighter on the bottom. So we can always go back, it's more. So what we want is we want wet paper, but what we don't want is we don't want it to be so wet that you actually have like a huge puddle on your paper, because then you won't have any control. Okay. So now we have done the gradient wash. The next thing we're gonna do is something called feathering. So let's go ahead and write feathering. All right. So for feathering, what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at two different colors. We wanna mix up two different colors. So I really like orange and I like yellow. So we're gonna make some more orange. And then I'm gonna take, oops, I should have cleaned my paintbrush. I didn't though. What you gonna do? Live and learn. All right, so I'm taking some yellow, making the yellow there. All right, so once we have that, again, we clean our paintbrush. You may actually wanna get 2 glasses of water so that you don't have to, you have like a clean water and a dirty water. All right, so we're gonna take some water. Notice how I get rid of the excess before I go here. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paint with water first. So we're painting the paper, getting it wet. So once it's all wet, the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little bit of yellow. I'm gonna paint on one side. There we go, painting. And then I'm gonna take some orange, I'm gonna paint the other side. And because it's wet, what should happen is that they kind of mix in the middle. So, all right, so they are mixing in the middle. So unfortunately, or fortunately, this is not actually watercolor paper. This is just regular old paper, but we use it because, so what I want you to notice is, do you see how like in the center here, because the paper is wet, there is no, there's no lines. You just sort of, everything kind of flows together. We can add more color if we want to. All right, so that is feathering. So the next thing we want to do is we want to do glazing. So glazing is where you add dry color to, you add wet color to dry. So this is sort of like a wet on dry. Okay, all 3 of these are all wet on wet, which means we're applying wet paint to wet paper. Okay, so glazing, like I said, is dry. So first thing we're gonna do is we gotta put some paint on the paper. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make, I don't know, let's say, let's get some purple. Okay. So then we're gonna paint some water always. And then I'm gonna grab some purple, fill in the purple. Okay, so this is going to be the spot where we're gonna come back and we need to be, like I said, it's wet on dry. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna leave that alone for a little while. We're gonna let it dry. Okay, and then we're gonna come back to it. So that's not finished yet. The next one is called lifting out. So there are two ways that you can do lifting out. You can do lifting out with either your paper towel or you can do it with a paintbrush. So we're gonna do it with both. So first thing we're gonna do, so this technique is super great for doing like a sky and adding clouds to your sky. So I'm gonna use blue because I can. All right, so I have my blue all mixed up. Now I'm gonna take some water. As always, I'm gonna paint my water. All right, there's my water. Now I'm gonna take the blue. And there it is, the blue's filling in the space like we said before. All right, so now the first way you can lift out is you can lift out by taking your paintbrush. Notice how I'm drying my paintbrush. And then I can actually like kind of pick up some color. So this can kind of work for you if something happened and you put too much paint and you're like, oh my God, it's too dark. You can grab your paintbrush and kind of pull out a little bit. So the other thing you can do, let's say I want to make a cloud. I can use my paper towel, it's got to still be wet. And you can literally like pull up. So this can be, you know, like let's say you were trying to make clouds in the sky. You can use this to kind of pull out some of the you know, colorant that's there. So this is good for clouds. So we're gonna say this is paintbrush and this is paper towel. And you might want to write down here, good for clouds, so that you remember. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do something called dry brush, which is exactly what it sounds like. I just wanna show you this guy, this funky one that I pulled out. So this paintbrush, you don't have one of these, you don't actually need one of these. This is just designed specifically for dry brushing. So notice how the bristles are kind of way spread out. So to do dry brush, the first thing you gotta do is take your paintbrush. I'm gonna do a little bit of brown, so you gotta get the cake wet. So the first thing, there's kind of two ways you can do dry brush. You can do dry brush on top of wet. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of brown. Notice I didn't do any water yet because we're trying to conserve. So first thing you can do is you can put down some brown. We need to let that, oh, I should have labeled it. Okay, label. Dry brush. So this is great for grass too. So we can take our paintbrush. So you dry it, actually, you know what? Switch to one of your flat brushes. Okay, so this guy, so you get a little bit wet. Then you wanna use your hands to spread it out. You see how I'm splitting the bristles a little bit? So what happens is we get it, we go straight into the palette, and then we're gonna, you know, scratch it out. So what happens is, you can make, see how it looks like blades of grass? This is great for grass. So if you had a wash underneath, you could go back and add this on top and it would make it look like, you know, like tiny little blades of grass. The other thing you can do with this thing is, let me make sure this is dry. We can also do like wood grain. So this is not dry yet, so I'm gonna have to come back. So we're gonna go back to this. Okay, so let's write good for wood and grass. All right, so the next one, this is called wax resist. So this is something that works really well for if you want to do like a field of flowers or you want to do like stars in the sky. Kind of depends. So I picked a white crayon. I didn't have regular crayons here, but you're welcome to. But you can do whatever you want. So like, let's say you wanted to make a field of flowers or something, right? So if you grabbed your crayon and you made a bunch of dots on it, what happens is, because it's wax, it creates like a resist on the paper. So you're gonna paint the paper, and what's gonna happen is wherever you put the crayon, it's not gonna flow. So I'm gonna start out, make it all wet. There it is, wet, wet, wet. And then we don't have a lot of green, so we're gonna grab some green because I already have it. All right, and you're gonna paint on top of it. So you can kind of see how where I put the little dots of crayon, the paint didn't flow. So if you were trying to make, let's say you were trying to make a field of orange poppies, because it's California. So you could take your orange crayon and do a bunch of that, and then you'd end up with these, you know, orange spots with the, whatever the background is. Very nice. All right. So next, I haven't done any red yet. All right, let's get some red going. So for salt, this is how it works. We're gonna start out, we're gonna paint with some water. Here's my water. Oops, I forgot to mix the red. All right, let me make some red real quick. All right, so the next one we're gonna do, this is salt. Okay, so we're gonna use, so different kinds of salts kind of do different things. This is where we're getting kind of fancy. So I painted water, so next I'm gonna paint my red. Here's my red. Okay, now the next thing you're gonna do is you're going to take some salt. I got some funky salt that I probably can't open. Oh, I can open it. Oh, great. All right, now different kinds of salt do different things, but what happens is when it dries, you don't want to pull it off. I'm going to do both kinds so you can kind of see. Okay. All right, I am going to just stick my salt there in case I need it later. Okay, so we're just going to let that dry, and we're going to see what happens. And now we're going to move over. And if at any point you need to pause, feel free to pause. I'm just going to check this out. Are we dry? Ooh, we're dry. We can go back and finish these. All right. Step one, I'm going to grab the flat brush, right? Notice I dried it off, spreading out the bristles as much as I can. Now I'm going to grab some brown. And then what happens is I can go over top of it and I can make this scratchiness. So what this does is it kind of looks like an old, like weathered piece of wood. So this is really good if you're painting something that has like old wood, or you're trying to, you know, you have a fence, or maybe you're trying to get the bark of a tree and you want to get that texture. So this is a really good way to get that. All right, so now we're going to do our glazing. All right, glazing. All right, so this is dry. You can check it, feel it, make sure it's good. All right, so glazing is basically when you put a color on top of the other color and you can kind of affect change. So let's say, I don't know, I'll pick blue. So I can take this color on top of it. Like imagine that I was making, I should have made this a mountain. This is where glazing works really well. But you can add color on top of it. Like this works also for shadows. So if I want, I can soften this so you can't really see the edge of it, but it's still controlled. You can see, like you can kind of, you know, when you look at mountainsides where, you know, you can kind of see the crags. So you could paint with one color and then, just once it dries, go on top of it to get like the shadows that are inside the mountains. Okay, so next. All right, let's do our next ones. We're gonna go. Yep. Okay, so this is masking tape. So this is called saving the white, right? So what happens is we have these situations where we have this piece of paper and we don't paint with white. We just want to leave, like if we want white to be someplace, we want to like not paint there. So like obviously, you know, if it's a big spot, it's easy not to paint there. But what if you're trying to do a midnight sky and you want like that perfect pristine moon, but you want to have a big, you know, you want to have like a big area that is like dark. So what you can do is you can take masking tape and you can cut it into whatever shape you want. So for this, I'm just going to make 2 little spots. All right. So let's say, all right, so I'm going to make a nice dark color for a night sky because I want to. So what I'm going to do, I go over here, I got my blue already, that's great. I'm gonna add a little bit of orange to it because orange kind of darkens it. makes it a little bit darker. Okay, so now I'm gonna wash my paintbrush, always and forever. Take my water, I'm gonna put my water down over top of this, beep, 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 beep. And then I'm gonna take my dark color and I'm gonna put it down. So notice where the masking tape is, it masks it, so it's not gonna flow there. So what happens is we're gonna let that dry completely before we do anything else, because if we don't, it'll flow into it. But when it dries, we'll be able to peel it off and we'll have two white spots where we decide. So imagine you can cut that into whatever shape you want. Like if you're doing a sun, you could cut out that perfect sun. All right, so the next one is called Spattering. We got a bunch of spattering. We gotta do spattering. And this is dry. Okay, so what we're gonna do with spattering, and you might want to, you don't have to, but you can grab like some like scrap paper that you have. I'm just gonna drop that there. All right, so spattering, basically what happens is you get your paintbrush, you get some paint on it, and then all you do is like you can So the nice thing about spattering, oh, I got it over there, darn it, that was my fault. All right, so the nice thing about spattering is you can kind of create texture. So let's say you're making like a sandy beach or something and you want to create these like layers of different colors. So this can add interest to it, so you don't have just plain old whatever. Okay, so the next thing you're gonna do is, let's see. So the next thing we can do is we're gonna do spattering on wet. All right, spattering wet. Okay, so I'm gonna keep this paintbrush that already has some paint on it. Well, actually I may not be able to. Okay, so let me see. So I'm gonna take one of my paintbrushes and dry it. I'm going to paint a wash. Here's my wash, 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 wash. Oh, ignore that. Hopefully you won't have the same problem I did. All right, so once we have our wash, right? The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take the paint. Let me grab the paint. And if it's wet and we spatter, get my blocker. What happens is it runs into it and it kind of flows out. So you end up with these like, you end up with these like bloody colors. So this again would work really well if you're trying to make like a tree or something. And then the final one we're gonna do, hang on, is we're gonna spatter with water. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do one of our washes. Beep, beep, beep. Okay, so I'm getting my water ready. We're gonna grab a color. Water, I'm gonna do wash first. Here's my wash. Ooh, my water is getting green. Bad news bears, huh? All right, so I got way too much water here. All right, doesn't matter. All right, so we're gonna take our color. We're going to put it down. Here's my color. I'm gonna try to spread it out. There's a lot of water here. We kind of want it to be a little bit less water there. Okay, so we got that. Now, you want it to be glistening, but you don't want there to be like a puddle. So I'm trying to see if I can suck up some of this. Yeah, look at me, I'm lifting out sort of. All right, so I'm pulling up some of that paint. So I don't want these puddles. This is what I'm trying to get rid of, these puddles. All right, so once I have this, the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my paintbrush. I get it wet, right? I got my water. And then we're gonna spatter with water. So what happens, you can kind of see, wherever the water went, it kind of creates like these little speckled, basically it gives you like a speckled effect. All right, so we got our speckled effect. So this would again be really nice if you were trying to make like a textured surface. Like let's say you're doing the ground and you don't just want to make the ground all brown or something because it's sand. You want to like mix it up. So you could do a wash, do some spatter, let it dry, do some more spatter in a different type, or you know, spatter some other colors. You got lots of options here. All right, so next we have pouncing. So imagine that we are trying to make a tree, right? And we don't want to make that like stereotypical, you know, the tree we made when we were kids where we do this thing and go, that's a tree. Because that's not a tree, that's what we think a tree looks like. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna do pouncing. So you grab your paintbrush, this is dry, so this is a wet on dry technique. You get some paint in, and what you do is you can like, basically you just kind of stab the paper. But you can do it with like multiple colors. Right here's my multiple colors. You know, you can kind of create like a loose looking leaves. And you can, you know, you can obviously pounce straight from the, pounce straight from the thing if you want to. But this would work really well to get like the foliage of a tree or something. Because, you know, it's really, you wouldn't paint like leaf by leaf. Okay, so the next one is called Sgraffito. Okay, so Sgraffito is pretty simple. What you're gonna do is we're gonna take our color. Let's see. We haven't done any red recently. All right, so we're gonna take red, right? So what happens is you paint your red. Oh, we need a little more than that. That feels too light. All right, so we have our color. And we paint it. Now, what we can do is we can take the back of the paintbrush, right? And we can make lines in it. So let's say, you know, like, so what happens is if we push down and do something, you'll see it kind of creates a dark line. So this might be nice, again, to make texture if you're doing a, like, let's say you're painting a tree and you wanted to create like different bits of bark. You can see it gets darker there, so you can scratch into it. All right, next is aquarelle or watercolor pencil. AQURELLL. Okay, or. All right, so what happens with this is basically you can, you know, let's say you wanted to take something and you wanted to get like a fine edge and you were worried about, you know, you were worried about it like not going the right place. So you can, you know, kind of create an edge and then fade it a little bit. So here we go. I'm gonna switch to a smaller paintbrush for this because I want to. Ooh, that one's hard. Break it up. All right, so I'm taking this and you'll notice I can paint, and the watercolor pencil is water soluble. So when I put water on it, it smears, which is nice. Like you could, you know, theoretically you could paint and then come back and, I mean, you could draw and then come back and like blend a little. Like, wouldn't this be nice when you guys were doing your faces, blending that stuff together? Good stuff. Okay, so finally, the last one we're gonna do is what I like to call making black. You know what? I totally forgot. Okay, so I have another one to add. All right, so one of the things you probably noticed is that you have a hole here, right? So that hole is where black should be, but I took the black out because instead of using black, like black is such a bold, cold color, it can suck all of the interest into painting. So instead of like using the black, what we do is we make our black, and by making our black, we can kind of control the tone of the black. Like basically what you do is on the color wheel you use complementary colors. So first thing we're gonna do is I'll show you 3 ways to make it. So we think about, you know, I always think about holiday colors. So we already have some red here. This is red. So the opposite of red on the color wheel is green. So if we take some green and we mix it in, you'll notice it instantly kind of goes, right now there's too much red, so you can add more green. But you'll see that instantly it kind of goes, there's still need more green. And now I need more red. You know, it instantly goes neutral, basically. So if you're ever trying to, like if you want a green that isn't as, like let's say you were doing an outside green, obviously you don't want that green because that green is too powerful or too like out of the box, it doesn't look real. If you add a little bit of red to it, you can tone it down. All right, so this is our blackish color. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna paint here. I want you to take the color. We're gonna do all three types of making black here. So we're gonna paint it, paint it, paint it, paint it. And you can obviously make this darker by adding more like dark colors. All right. So here, this is red plus green. And R plus G, I really hope that you're okay with that. The next one we're gonna do, oops, there's a drop of water on my piece. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do blue, oops, blue plus orange. And then finally, we're gonna do violet plus yellow. That B looks weird. All right, so let me grab my paintbrush and we're gonna start out, we're gonna grab blue. There's my blue. Drying my paintbrush off. I'm gonna grab some orange. I'm gonna go in there and, oh, look at that, too much orange, you can see, you can tell. All right, so we mix, and we're gonna go like that. So, pro tip, if you want like a super dark black, what you could do is like, you see how I made this here? If I went away and I let my palette dry completely, like let's say I came back tomorrow, this would be dry and then I would have this opportunity where I could like re-wet it and it would be that exact dark color and I'd be able to get like precision. All right, so our final one we're gonna do is we're gonna do violet and yellow. So let me grab some violet and rinse it off. I don't wanna get my yellow dirty. Grab some yellow. Look at that, way too much violet for the yellow. All right. All right, there we are. Okay, so there's my violet and yellow. All right, so you can kind of see there's three different colors there, but the important thing is you can make the black, and you can kind of look at this, and this is a very cold black, right? Looks a bit cool, and this is these are kind of warmer blacks, so you can like make like warmer or cooler tones that kind of go with, like if you're doing, let's say you're doing a forest, right? And everything kind of has these green tones, you probably wanna make the red and green black because that black will kind of go with the feeling that you have with your other, like with the other pictures. All right, so there was one thing that we hadn't done yet that I wanna do, but I'm afraid this guy is kind of not dry yet. Just gonna use this, let me see, let's test it. Ooh, you know, we can look back at our salt. Our salt is done. So if we take our salt, oops, I should cover up my salt. If we take the salt and we brush it off, what you'll notice is that that leaves, like if you look at the texture of the paper, it almost looks like you know when water is reflecting off of the surface, you kind of get that. So if you were doing like a creek, say, and you want to get that effect in the water, that'd be a good way to do it. Put my salt there. Okay, we are almost done. I don't want to mess with that. So I'm gonna be crazy and I'm gonna turn the page and like let it kind of balance up top so that it can dry. And I'm just gonna do this one, which is called a bleed. And basically what happens with the bleed, I'm just gonna draw a little space there. Basically what happens with the bleed is you can This is like another way that you could make a cloud in the sky. All right, so we're gonna take our water and we're gonna paint it with water first. And let's say we wanted to put the blue at the bottom. So I can take a little bit of blue. I went straight in the palette. But if I touch this here, you can kind of see what happens is it's because it's wet, it kind of bleeds out into the paper. So this might be a nice way to make your sky. You can like tap on it. If you have those like runny clouds, that's not a bad way to, So we just tap it and the color bleeds into it. So you don't have a lot of control. You just gotta kind of know where you're putting the paper. But it's a really nice way to get like a soft line. And you will notice when we start painting on actual watercolor paper that it is infinitely easier to control the water. This paper is not designed, you can kind of see the way that it's like buckled and stuff. This paper was not designed for watercolor, but we are doing it anyway because we want references. So those are all the basic techniques for watercolor paper. And the next thing you're gonna do is some practice mixing colors to kind of see what happens when you mix different colors. Okay, I'll see you in that video. How do I turn this off?